Prabhupada Paramahansa Pravajakacharya Pai Charanaravindra Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON Sanstha Acharya, His loving divine grace Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Pravajakacharya Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai. Nam Acharya Shri Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Sakaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gop Gopinath Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhana Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Navadip Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Shri Ganga Maya Ki Jai. Yamuna Maya Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Tulsi Maharani Ki Jai. Harinam Sankirtan Yagya Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada Transcendental Buddhist Vision Ki Jai. Nitai Gaura Premanande Hari. Oh glorious assembled devotees, oh glorious assembled devotees, oh glorious assembled devotees, oh glorious, the lotus feet of Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga. So, reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, second canto, chapter 9, verse 3. Yarhi vava mahim nisve, yarhi vava mahim nisve, paramsmin kalamayayo, rameta gata sammoha, yakta dasate tadobhayam, yarhi vava mahim nisve, Parasmin kalamayayo Rameta gata sammoha Yakta dasate tadobhayam Yarivav mahim nisve Parasmin kalamayayo Rameta gata sammoha Yakta dasa tadobhayam Yarahi, at any time. Vava, certainly. Mahimin, in the glory. Swear, of himself. Parasmin, in the supreme. Kala, time. Mayo, of the material energy. Rameta, enjoys. Gata sammoha, being freed from the misconception, Tvekta, giving up, Udasate, in fullness, Tada, then, Ubayam, both, misconception of I and mine. So, before I read the translation or anything, just like to express my gratitude and thank you to the devotees here for giving me the opportunity to say something for my own purification. More than anything else, it is for my own purification, because most of you are a lot more qualified to sit here than I ever will be, but I've been requested, so in some way I'd like to try and serve. Also, just like to remember everyone in our prayers, all these people that have just left their bodies in Turkey, Syria, earthquake, over 20,000 people have been killed. So just if you can remember them in our prayers. Translation. As soon as a living entity becomes situated in its constitutional glory and begins to enjoy the transcendence beyond time and material energy, he at once gives up the two misconceptions of life, I and mine, and thus becomes fully manifested as a pure self. Purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. The two misconceptions of life, namely I and mine, are verily manifested in two classes of men. In the lower state, the conception of mine is very prominent, and in the higher state, the misconception of I is prominent. In the animal state of life, the misconception of time is perceivable even in the category of cats and dogs, who fight with one another. With the same misconception of time, in the lower stage of human life, the same misconception is also prominent in the shape of it is my body. It is my house, it is my family, it is my caste, it is my nation, it is my country, and so on. In the higher stage of speculative knowledge, the same misconception of mine is transformed into I am, or it is all I am, etc. There are many classes of men comprehending the same misconception of I and mine in the different colors, but the real significance of I can be realized only when one is situated in the consciousness of I am eternal servitor of the Lord. This is pure consciousness, and the whole Vedic literatures teaches this conception of life. The misconception of I am the Lord or I am the Supreme is more dangerous than the misconception of mine. Although there are times, directions in the Vedic literature to think oneself one with the Lord, that does not mean that one becomes identical with the Lord in every respect. Undoubtedly, there is oneness of the living entity with the Lord in many respects, but ultimately the living entity is subordinate to the Lord, and he is constitutionally meant for satisfying the senses of the Lord. The Lord therefore asks the conditioned souls to surrender unto him. Had the living entities not been subordinate to the supreme will, why would the living entity be asked to surrender? Had the living being been equal in all respects, then why was he put under the influence of Maya? We have already discussed many times that the material energy is controlled by the Lord. The Bhagavad Gita 9:10 confirms the controlling power of the Lord over the material nature. Can a living entity who claims to be good as a supreme being control the material nature? The foolish, I would reply that he would do so in future. even accepting that in the future one will be as good as a controller of the material nature as the supreme being, then why is one now under the control of material nature? The Bhagavad Gita says that one can be freed from the control of the material nature by surrendering unto the Supreme Lord. But if there is no surrender, then the living entity will never be able to control the material nature. So one must give up this misconception of I by practicing the way of devotional service or firmly being situated in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. A poor man without any employment or occupation may undergo many troubles in life. But if by chance the same man gets a good service under the government, he at once becomes happy. There is no profit in denying the supremacy of the Lord, who is the controller of all energies, but one should constitutionally situated in one's own glory, namely be situated in the pure consciousness of being the eternal servitor of the Lord. In his conditional life, the living entity is servant of all illusory Maya, and in his liberated state, he is pure, unqualified servant of the Lord. To become untinged by the modes of material nature is the qualification of entering into the service of the Lord. As long as one is a servant of the mental concoction, one cannot be completely free from the disease of I and mine. The Supreme Truth is uncontaminated by the illusory energy because he is the controller of that energy. The relative truths are apt to be engrossed in illusory energy. The best purpose is served, however, when one is directly facing the Supreme Truth, as when one faces the sun. The sun overhead in the sky is full of light, but when the sun is not visible when the sun is not in the visible sky, all is in darkness. Similarly, when one is in face to face with the Supreme Lord, he is freed from all illusion. One who is not in darkness of illusory Maya, the Bhagavad Gita confirms this as follows. Mamachayeva vibhacharena bhakti yogena sevate saguna samatyatan brahma kalpate. So the science of bhakti, of worship in the Lord, glorifying the Lord, hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam from the right sources, not from a professional man, but from a person who is Bhagavatam in life. And being always in the association of pure devotees should be adopted in the earnestness. One should not be misled by conception of I and mine. The karmis are fond of misconception of mine, and jnanis are fond of misconception of I. And both of them are unqualified to be free from the bondage of the illusory energy. Srimad Bhagavatam and primary, the Bhagavad Gita, are both meant for delivering a person from the misconception of I and mine. And Srila Vyasadeva transcribed them for the deliverance of the fallen souls. The living entity has to be situated in that transcendental position where there is no more influence of time nor of the material energy. In the conditioned life, the living entity is subject to the influence of time in dream of past, present, and future. The mental speculator tries to conquer the influence of time by future speculation of becoming Vasudeva or the Supreme Lord himself by means of culturing knowledge and conquering our ego. But the process is not perfect. The perfect process is to accept Lord Vasudeva as the supreme in everything, and the best perfection in culturing knowledge is surrendering onto Him, because He is the source of everything. Only in that concept can one get rid of the misconception of I and mine. Both Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam confirms it. Srila Vyasadeva has specifically contributed to the illusion living entities, the science of God, and the process of bhakti yoga in his great literature, Srimad Bhagavatam, and the conditioned soul should fully take advantage of this great science. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayana Namaskrityam. Narayana Namaskrityam. Naroncheva Narottama. Naroncheva Narottama. Devin Saraswati Vyasan. Saraswati Vyasan. Tatha Jayamudirahe. Shunvata Sakatha Krishna, Mata Sakatha Krishna, Punya Shavana Kirtanam, Shavana Kirtanam, Ridantasta Badrani, Ridantasta Badrani, Vidunoti Sahechitam, Noti Sahechitam, Nashta Prayeshu Abadeshu, Taprayeshu Abadeshu, Nittam Bhagavata Sevaya, Bhagavata Sevaya, Bhagavati Uttama Shloke, Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtike. Om Jnana-Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshulamitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Sapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavam Shah Shri Rupam Sahagajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Hitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sarvadutam Parijana Sahitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanitam Shah He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapto Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Evacha Pavanebhayo Vaishnavebhayo Namo Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pashtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashtata Disitarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. As soon as a living entity becomes situated in his constitutional glory and begins to enjoy the transcendence beyond time and material energy, at once gives up the true misconception of life, I and mine, and thus becomes fully manifested as a pure self. So, in yesterday's class, Sankirtan Priya Prabhu very elaborately spoke about mercy and compassion and very nicely explained what it really means by practical examples. And I was just reading through these purports over and over again, And I noticed, if you look within the purport, Prabhupada writes minimum 11 times I and mine. 11 times. So one can imagine the importance of it. There are many speakers who have already spoken about this. But I thought, let's look at this in a practical aspect of devotees, those who have actually lived through I and mine. I mean, just starting off with, this Srimad Bhagavatam is there due to the mercy of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. At the age of 69, such an advanced age, when you get to that age, only then you realize what it means to get old, or to advance in age. These are practical examples. If Prabhupada had thought of I and mine, would he have ever been able to live Vrindavan and come to the West, traveling on a cargo ship? So we have to look at this practical example that this I and mine is there in every living entity, as Prabhupada explains. So prominent in certain species more than others. Mine is less prominent than I, because here within the purport, Prabhupada speaks about, when one thinks about I am God. Prabhupada explains all of this within the purport. But we can see that, Prabhupada, through his practical examples, showed how this I and mine can be transformed into devotional service. At every aspect, at every stage, Srila Prabhupada has used everything that has come to him for the service of Krishna. And just to Srila Prabhupada is one example, but our previous acharyas are also on the same level. That at no stage, because the real disease of the material life is I and mine. The whole reason, the whole purpose we're here in the material world is because of I and mine. If we didn't accept this, the problem is we accept this body as to be reality. Everything that happens to us, we think is the reality. But Prabhupada, by his practical examples, shows us that whatever we have, whatever we can do, we can dovetail that to the service of Krishna. And there are many levels that one can check. There's a bar to check where we are in our spiritual life. And Bhaktivedanta Thakur, in his book Sharanagati, has written many wonderful songs. And the practical example that he gives, Manasa Deho Geho Jo Kichu Mora, mind, body, and family. Whatever may be mine, I have surrendered at your lotus feet, O youthful son of Nanda. So the very same body that we in the material world trying to lord it over, that we are actually trying to enjoy, can be dovetailed towards spiritual life. That Prabhupada gives the same class, and he explains that when we say I am, we can use this word I am. I'm a servant of Krishna. I am a servant of Krishna. But most of us fail to understand some of these things, because there's, the whole of the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Bhagavad Gita, there's a lot of repetition of reminding us again and again and again. Because in this age of Kali, realization and our understanding is very shallow. Is explained manda sumanda bhava. That we're very forgetful. Particularly I am. I had to put this on paper to understand what I'm going to be talking about. So this forgetfulness gets a lot worse as you grow older. And we hear of dementia, Alzheimer's. There's so many other diseases, so many things will come in. But unless we have actually practiced Krishna consciousness throughout our life, we don't know what the result at the end is going to be. Because we think that I've done this much. I've done this much, and that will secure me a place. But the reality is that we don't know what state and where and when we'll leave this body. So Krishna is very kind. Srila Prabhupada is very kind. He's made this International Society for Krishna Consciousness, where we can take association of devotees. It is only through association that we can actually become little realize. It is, as yesterday's class explaining, that compassion and mercy, it is due to compassion and mercy of others that we have got this Krishna consciousness. That's something that we lack and we forget. That this, beautiful temple, the Haveli, everything is here. But it just hasn't come here by chance. Someone else has done a lot of hard work, a lot of suffering, a lot of sleepless nights, a lot of other things that they've done in order for all these facilities to exist. There are a lot of devotees here. I can only realize this Prabhu, who's been here for 30, 35 years, since the 80s. But we can see, there's influx of devotees coming and going. People come, they learn, and then they go away. Some actually follow. There are those then who forget. But if we try and analyze and see, someone gave us something, that means we have to be grateful. When somebody gives us something, if you don't become grateful, there is no value in what's been given to us. There's no value in it, because if it's just there for a little while, but something that is there throughout our lives. And this Krishna consciousness is actually really meant throughout our whole life. Krishna consciousness is not something that is done for 5 years, 10 years. I'm in the ashram, I'm here. I've practiced for this number of years, and I've secured myself a place. Yes, no doubt, undoubtedly, Krishna will look at everything that we've done. But this process is meant for a whole lifetime. It's not something that we can do for a little period and think that just like exams, I've passed my exams. But the real exam is at the time of death. The real exam is at the time of death. What will we remember? What will we be able to remember? The thing that is most ingrained in our mind. The mind is of such nature, that at times is favorable. Chanchala himana Krishna pramati. Arjuna explains all of this. The whole of the Bhagavad Gita is being spoken because we think of I and mine. The whole battle has taken place. Jai Shri Shri Radha Gokulananda ki Jai, Shri Shri Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman ki Jai, Shri Shri Gaunitai ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. The whole battle has taken place because of I and mine. It is between dharma and adharma, the Kauravas and the Pandavas. Kauravas thinking mind that, I'm the king, Dhritarashtra, then his son, Duryodhana. That if this is the knowledge going through our heads, our brain, then this is what we'll be able to remember. But here Prabhupada speaks about that unless we can actually serve a person who's a Bhagavat, speaks about a person being Bhagavat. Who is that person? We have to see, we have to analyze. And, as I said, that when we think of, something's just there, it's not just there by chance. Someone has put a lot of time, effort. Just looking at the history of this Bhaktivedanta Manor, it was just a manor before. But it got changed when the devotees came. It's the same manor, but the whole manor now has become a tirtha. Why? Because the consciousness of the devotees here, because of Radha Gokulananda, Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman, Gonitai, they're residing here. So a place which was just an ordinary place for residence for somebody, got turned into a tirtha. And we have thousands of people coming. But for this, a lot of devotees have put a lot of hard work into it, a lot of effort into it. The list is endless. Devotees like Tribhuvanath, Kripamoya Prabhu, Shrutidharma, Rameshwar, Akhandini Prabhu, Sukadev. The list is, a very massive list. But the problems that the temple went through, the younger generation will never understand. Because it's something there. When something is there, it's taken for granted. But the devotees who really fought for the temple to be open, if you know the history of the manor, I'm sure most of you do, that the temple was going to be closed. So in order to keep the temple open, we had to buy land, we had to build the road. There's a whole slogan behind it. But all this is only possible because the gratitude that we must show to all these hard-working devotees, that they have sacrificed their life. They have sacrificed their life so that we can actually understand this iron mind that really is to be used in Krishna's service. Which is a practical example of what all these other devotees have done. But our mind is of such nature, it's like, when we're here, our thoughts, yes, I'm a servant, I'm serving, but the moment we go out, it's a different world. To actually practice Krishna consciousness and to be living outside is more difficult. Then, because no doubt everything has its pluses and minuses. Within the ashram, there's a time limit how much you can spend in the shower. There's a rota. There's a system. But at home, there's not a system unless you discipline yourself. So this Krishna consciousness can only work if we actually practice this throughout our lives. Because it's something that will really test us at the end of our lives. There are many examples, devotees that have left their bodies, and devotees just happen to be there. Our former temple president, Shrutidharma Prabhu, not everyone knows him, but him, Pranabandhu Prabhu, all these devotees, they've sacrificed their whole life completely, family and everyone. They're grihastas, they live outside, but serving the temple, within the temple, but setting an example. What example can we set from learning? If we do, eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. Ahar, nitra, bhai. Sleeping, everyone sleeps, whether it's in the ashram, at home, but to what degree we follow these principles. So these devotees have given us examples of how to really actually nourish Krishna consciousness, to give to others. Gratitude means to actually give to others what we've been given. The love, the care, because without love and care, why would anybody want to come to join a temple? Unless they're being looked after. If one is neglected, we've seen devotees have come and gone, and they feel that they've been neglected. That's why they leave. It takes so much effort and hard work. Prabhupada says, it takes gallons of blood to make a devotee. And then, after spending this much time and everything, we don't look after the devotee, they'll just leave. What's the value? But if we live by example, we'll see that, it's like living within the ashram, someone's watching you all the time, right? What quota you've got on the service. Gopinath's nodding away, yes? So there's an element. There's element of responsibility. And that responsibility can only come if we feel that, someone has taken the effort to, part this knowledge on to me, to change my life. Really, Krishna consciousness is meant to change our lives. From where we were to where we are, and to where we need to end up. No one wants to come back to this material world. No one wants to come back because it's nothing but full of suffering. As age kicks in, because we don't realize, when we're young, we don't realize what age actually means. 30 years ago, before, when I started coming to the temple, probably more, with I in mind, it was a realization for me. Back in 1982, I met devotees in Germany, in Heidelberg. And I started feeling that, this is my religion. What are these guys doing? So I went to the temple, and I was given a Bhagavad Gita. Because my consciousness at that time was, how can you, do Harinam? How can you chant the name of God on the streets? Because it's so sacred. Krishna's name is meant to be so sacred that how can you just freely go out on the streets and, distribute books when it's got pictures of Krishna and everything on there? There are people that will take the book, there are people that will throw it away. That was my conception. That was thinking, this is meant to be my religion. What are these guys doing? So I read the Bhagavad Gita. And then I started realizing, understanding what it means to give out books on the streets. That these books on the streets are meant to change people's lives. It's the way of giving, as Sankirtan Priya Prabhu mentioned yesterday, the mercy, giving out the mercy. Prabhupada at this advanced age didn't need to come out, didn't need to do anything. But because of the order of his spiritual master said, if ever you got any money, print books in English and go to the West. But still, we will not really realize, even though this is a repetition, we will not realize until we get old. We won't realize until you have to get up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom. Not once, not twice. Then you start realizing what old age means. When the knees start giving away or the back starts giving away. But when we were young, nothing's a problem. Like my son, went with the boys from here to Radhadesh Mellows, sleeping at 2 o'clock, getting up very early again, not a problem. But when you get old, you try to do these things, it's not going to be possible. So this Krishna consciousness is of such nature that when it's given to us, if we take it to the full extent, if we take it to the fullest extent, then we'll actually change our lives. Then, even when we get old, we'll still be Krishna conscious. Even when we die, we'll be Krishna conscious. Providing that we can really take this to our heart and change this, business of I and mine. Because the material world is full of it. The spiritual world is totally the opposite. Totally the opposite. Nothing is mine. Everything is Krishna's. Yukta Vairagya. Srila Rupa Goswami speaks about this. That yes, you've got money, build a temple. You've got a house, invite devotees. Help to spread this mission. And the mission will go on whether we're involved or not involved. We can see the difference within the manor in the last, for those who've been around for 10 years, you can see the difference. Those who've been around for 20 years can see a bigger difference. And those who've been around for 30 years, 40 years, you can see the difference in the manor. The manor is growing and growing. And at the same time, there's a lot more devotees around. But the mood at every stage is different. Back in the 80s, if you were to watch a television or you were to eat crisps from outside, Prabhu is Maya. Onto the degree that we're willing to compromise our Krishna consciousness, to that degree, Krishna will actually reveal ourselves. How much extra are we willing to put in? The more we put in, there is practicalities of life, and there's also sense scarification of I and mine. There are times when things need to be done. Prabhupada gave instructions. Yes, go to the pub. If you have to drink, you drink. You go out if you have to eat meat. If you have to eat meat, do it. But we have to see what the circumstances are. Unless we analyze what these circumstances actually mean, then we'll just become engrossed. I have to have this, or Prabhu, when we are, or I'm hungry, or I'm this. But the reality is, to what degree do we let our mind loose? It is a question of mind over matter. When you engage in service, especially when there's festivals on, you could be fasting all day, means nothing. Because you're so much engrossed in doing devotional service that the thought doesn't enter our heads. But when we're not engaged in the devotional service, we can see what will happen. So this is a repetition again and again. Prabhupada emphasizes these points of this I and mine. Particularly in this purport, he repeats it 11 times. So the significance of it is, what is the reality for devotee? For devotee, I am a servant of Krishna. This is my Krishna's altar, or this is my Krishna's room. This is my Krishna's home. If we transform our consciousness into Yukta Vairagya, as Rupa Goswami teaches us, then ultimately everything can be utilized in Krishna's service. But really, it depends on what our training is, and how strong we are in our Krishna consciousness. The stronger we are, the more firm we'll become. So with that, I'd like to end here. I beg for your forgiveness if there's things wrong. I'm sure there is. Any comments, any corrections, any questions? Jai Srila Prabhupada.
Krishna, thank you, Prabhu. Just on that last point you were mentioning, so if we're strong in our Krishna consciousness, we'll become more firm. Like, could you elaborate on what that means? I didn't quite understand. What does firm? Yeah, what that means.
What it means, firm in our Krishna consciousness, is like, we could be out on Sankirtan. If we're out all day, then, we already think ahead, being organized, that I'm going to be out all day. Have I got some water? Have I got some prasadam with me? But when we're not firm, when we don't consider certain situations, then we think, I can just take something from the shop, so I can take something. Because the point behind all of this is the consciousness that goes behind when we buy things from outside. And that consciousness actually enters within our stomach. And our thought process and everything then is evaluated from what we do. So, if we become firm and we're organized. When we're organized, then things run smoothly, right? Like within the temple, ashram, there's an organization. Everything is organized. Prasadam is on time. The arati is on time. Everything runs on time. These are practical examples because someone has spent that time, making sure these things happen.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you for the class. You mentioned Sankirtan Priya Prabhu's class yesterday and the verse and so on. In the purport, Prabhupada speaks about species of life and 400,000 being human beings. So can you say something about that? Can we distinguish between one species of human being and another species of human being? Like amongst the four-legged animals, you can distinguish between an elephant and a cow, for example. Right? So I don't know, maybe you can say something on that?
I can just say a few words on it. If somebody else has got any answers, then please feel free. Prabhupada mentions that the three modes of material nature are acting on us all the time. And then Prabhupada explains that according to the consciousness that we're in, then that's multiplied by 3 times. 9. 3 times 3 is 9. The 9 times 9 is 81. And it goes on. This interaction of the modes of material nature, sattva gun, rajagun, tamogun, are acting upon us every second of the day, every moment of the day. And according to these modes that we have, Prabhupada explains, that's the type of body that we develop. And that's how, the 400... In terms of actually breaking it down, I don't have the answer. But I'm sure it's there within the books. But Prabhupada does mention that according to this consciousness that we have and the interactions of it, Rajagun, Tamogun, Sattvic gun, these interact. And within that action and reaction, this is how the transformation of 400,000 human beings, or if someone else, if you got some.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Thank you for a nice class and dovetailing on so many aspects of the
purport that goes through with this theme of I and my. So the question is about the 400,000 human-like species. This is actually for the entire universal creation, not just this worldly planet.
Yeah.
So yesterday in my class I mentioned that in the sun planet there are bodies which are made out of fiery bodies, for example. The universal creation has variety of bodies like that, and human-like is variety. This question was also asked after the class yesterday when we were having a little discussion. Ruben Prabhu suggested that it also includes the variety of races that we have, but I don't know where that reference is from, but we will look at investigating that further to understand how that variety goes across, and if somebody else wants to add anything more to that. But those are the two aspects of where this variety of human-like 400,000 comes from.
And I presume this is, as you said, as you mentioned, different planets, the heavenly planets. I mean, just within the heavenly planets, if you calculate the number of heavenly planets there are there.
Yes. It's not human beings, human forms.
So that's how 400,000 forms. It's not a definite answer, but maybe better to research on it and look it up.
Yes, so human forms is different to human beings, like us as human beings. The forms are two-legged forms, forms that are like us.
Are we saying that demigods would fall under this 400,000 species of human beings? Or would the demigods fall out of the 400,000 human beings?
There is a number of demigods also. Sorry, my voice is very coarse. There is also a number of demigods. Among human species, you can say there are those like Charanas and Rakshasas and Yakshas.
Yeah, 33 million demigods.
These are not demigods. Yakshas, Rakshasas, Kimpurushas, these are all human-like and human species. Go under 400,000 species. And demigods, they have their own category, number as well. So, talking about humans, human species, 400,000, which is different alien species, like humans, not demigods. Is that right? Clear? I have to dig up and find. I have so many notes that I don't even know. Bhagavatam mentioned number of demigods. There is a species of demigods, species of humans, animals, herbs, whatever.
Yes.
Well, when Prabhupada describes the 8,400,000 species, he goes through the different categories, doesn't he?
Yeah.
The fish, the plants, reptiles, the mammals, and then humans. But so I always thought that because there's not a category above the humans, then the demigods would be included in that category. And also the fact that what's always emphasized is that humans are distinguished from animals, so that way, the demigods, although higher, they have a lot of the similarities with humans, in terms of, being able to be self-controlled and to question about the meanings of life. So.
Sankirtan Priya Prabhu.
It's just a quick search on the Bhagavad Gita's purport 7:15 talks about another class of Duskriti or miscreant is called the Naradama, or the lowest mankind. Nara means human being and Adama means the lowest. Out of the 8.4 million different species of living beings, there are 400,000 human species. Out of these, there are numerous lower forms of human life that are mostly uncivilized. Civilized human beings are those who have regulatory principles of social, political, and religious life. So therefore, there is as Taruna Prabhu mentioned, there are varieties of human species that are civilized as well as uncivilized, like miscreants and pishachas and so on and so forth like that.
Subterranean planets are there, which is...
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. So obviously, with a little bit of research, we can find out the breakdown of that 400,000. Hare Krishna.
Jai Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaura Premanande, Jai Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha, Kripa Sindhu Eva Cha.